Okay. Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. All you out there in the hallway, you can make your way on in. Welcome to our family meeting. We're switching it up a little bit, doing a Sunday evening and a little earlier. So there was a couple reasons for that, but one of the reasons being Monday is actually kind of an off day. It's usually an off day for all of our staff, and so when we have a family meeting, it means kind of working on a typical day off. So, and then we like the idea of kind of earlier. Those Monday night ones were pretty late, so I feel like we're going to give this a try. So thanks for being here tonight. Want to give you just a quick overview of our agenda for tonight, and then we'll jump right in. We're going to have some ministry updates that'll be kind of split into two chunks. So we'll have ministry updates at the beginning and then towards the end. We'll have a financial update from Amanda, some updates about our Main Street Promise project that's happening, as well as some parking stuff that's coming our way. We'll have an update on a few sabbatical things from Adam Lichty, one of our new elders. Our second chunk of ministry updates, a little bit about community care, and then we will close out the night as usual with some Q&R and some time for prayer, and that is the plan. So, our hope and desire for these is just an opportunity to get to hear more of like some of our planning, some of what we're thinking and talking about, letting you hear from elders and deacons and staff members. There are no deacons that are going to be speaking tonight, but they are represented nonetheless in a lot of the stuff that's going on. So our hope is that you get just a good feel for what's going on, and we like these to be pretty informal and lighthearted, and an opportunity to just connect to what's going on here. So if you have questions, be sure to kind of log them away. If you're watching online, we are also watching online, and you can either text your questions to Pastor Jenny, or you can leave a comment in the YouTube thread, and we will get to your online questions as well, but we're grateful if you're joining us online too. So, want to jump right in. We just want to give you a little bit of preview of where we're headed with our sermon series for the rest of the year. And so not a ton of detail here, but just to give you a little bit of an overview. And these things always tend to have some shifting and changes along the way, but this is the rough draft for where we're headed for the rest of the year. So we're in our Luke series through May 4th, with Easter on April 20th this year. So that Luke series will extend a couple weeks past Easter. And then starting on May 11th, we're going to be doing a social emotional well-being series. That won't be the title of it, but two kind of primary focuses that we've, I'm sorry, y'all. This is going to be interesting doing a Sunday for me. My brain's a little fried. Doing two particular focuses that we were just kind of thinking about for our congregation. What would be really pertinent to what we're facing as it relates to the integration of our social emotional well-being with our faith, and that those two things that kind of rose to the surface were addiction and forgiveness. And so that series will be covering both of those things. And then we'll also have kind of missional, it's a 6-week-long series, and so 2 weeks on addiction, 2 weeks on forgiveness, and then 2 weeks on kind of mission and how, because a part of our vision that way is that we are seeking renewal through the social emotional well-being of our community and also in what we're doing globally. And so we'll have 2 weeks kind of focusing on mission and what that looks like locally and the ways that we're engaged there, and then globally as well. And that's what that next picture at the bottom there, on Sunday, June 8th and Monday, June 9th, we'll have Carl and, not Jewel, it's Julie, Carl and Julie Gady, who will be here from Tutapona, and we're really excited for you to get to meet Carl and Julie. They started Tutapona, which is a nonprofit organization, about 15 years ago. And when I met Carl for the first time this last year, we ended up on a fishing trip together, and it felt like God had just like brought us together. I was like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "Oh, I work in kind of mental health care related. I have a mental health care related nonprofit." And I was like, "Oh, that's so interesting. What does that look like?" And so he went on to explain that Tutapona means together we will be healed. And what they do is they focus on war-torn communities, doing mental health care in war-torn communities. So they currently are in Uganda, they're currently in Iraq, and they're currently in Ukraine, and serving displaced people, people affected by war, men, women, and children. They have a wide variety of programs. And people that are from those countries work for Tutapona and serve those communities. And so we're excited to get to introduce them to you as a way of kind of expanding what it looks like for us to be involved in this type of work at a more global level. And so Carl's going to preach on that Sunday, and then we'll have some other opportunities that weekend for getting to connect with them and get to hear ways that we might be able to explore partnering. We haven't committed to partnering with Tutapona yet at an official level as a church, mostly because we want the opportunity for our church to get to meet them and to hear from them and to dream and imagine what it might look like for us to develop kind of a global extension of our mission, which is something that we've been lacking for a while. So that's really exciting. That's going to be on June 8th. And then a series through June and July, the end of June through the end of July, a paradigm shift series. So this is kind of looking at large kind of theological paradigm shifts that are maybe things that get touched on throughout the course of preaching and teaching at Union Chapel, but kind of going like, what would it look like to November? Did I put up November there? Somebody just texted me. Yeah, I did. November down there at the end. Sorry about the typos. This is what happens when I make slides on Sunday. So I'm silencing my notifications now, Alyssa. No, that's all right. Yeah, a series on kind of collecting some of those big ideas, and doing a series on that. A series in August on kind of highlighting vocation and talking about what does it look like to live out kingdom values and mission in the context of our individual vocations, and hopefully being able to highlight some of the ways in which people are finding creative ways of serving God within the midst of their own vocations here at Union Chapel. And then a series on Jonah in September, a series on what it looks like to develop kind of a community rule of life in October and November, and then Advent again in December, and that takes us through the year. So that's kind of the preview of the sermon series. You get a little sneak peek. This is not something we'll share on Sunday mornings or anything like that, but it gives you a sense of where we're going. And if you have any feedback or thoughts, or like, oh, this resource, or I've been thinking about this, would love to hear what kind of sparks your interest this way. So next I wanted to give a quick preview of some things that are happening in Lent and Holy Week. You've probably been seeing these slides on Sunday morning. Not all of these things have been announced, but Kathy Wilson and Jen Blaze are going to be leading some Lenten art practices on the 6th and the 13th. They've done a couple of things like this in the past, and really looking forward to the opportunity to kind of do contemplative art practices and learn from some artists in our community, and they do a great job of kind of leading into that. Their supplies are provided and all that stuff. And then during all of Holy Week, we will have our prayer room open. Chris is going to talk more about that in a minute. And then our Good Friday service will be on the 18th at 7 p.m. And then Easter, we will have two services as normal, at 9 and 11. We're going to do away with our experiment from last year of the 8 a.m. service, I think is what we tried to do. So we're going to go back to 9 and 11 with our Easter feast happening after that. Baptisms in the service, and then our Easter feast up in the annex. We're going to return to our Mediterranean-themed feast. And so more details coming around that. And also, if you're interested in being on an Easter feast team and helping out with that, Melanie is forming that team now and pulling things together. It's a great way to be involved and be a part of what's going on here at Easter. So now I'm going to bring up Chris, and he's just going to talk briefly about our prayer room and what that's going to look like this year and how you can be involved in that.
All right. Well, I ate bacon and took a nap today, so I'm tired. Feeling a little weird up here with you guys. But yeah, I was thinking about our prayer rooms, and the desire and heart behind those really is just to cultivate spaces of prayer. And what this looks like is like you come into a place and you start to move from station to station, and you kind of work through the different prompts and the tactile expressions and the practices of prayer that it's kind of leading you into. And one by one, you're handling things, and you're reading things, and you're listening to things, and you're just beginning to just pray in a very natural way. And one of the things that I've discovered that I really love about what we're doing with this team is you can be in that space for like 2 hours, and somehow you don't even recognize, like, oh, I've been just praying and talking to God and communing with the Spirit the entire time. And so that's kind of a little bit of the heart behind what we're doing and what the prayer team is trying to do as far as building these spaces for our community to engage with. And this year, again, we're going to go ahead and do the Stations of the Cross during Holy Week. So if you had a chance to do that last year, it's art, reflection, scriptured, and embodied prayer prompts. And then for those of us that have like a little touch of ADHD and like maybe struggle to focus a little bit, we even created an audio guide to kind of take you through those. So it's the reading of the scripture, and then it's the prayer reflection being read to you. And you can just carry an iPad or your phone or device around and use that. And the goal and the heart behind this is just to journey alongside Jesus in his passion that redeemed the world, and just be in that headspace throughout Holy Week. And then additionally, this year, one of the things that I'm excited about is we're going to do gatherings on the 7s. So the space will be open from 6 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Let me get this right. From 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning, and then from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock every evening during the week of Holy Week. The only exception will be Good Friday, where we're having our Good Friday service, and so the space will not be open during that time before, but it will be open after until 10 o'clock. And so that's kind of the idea as far as the space that we want to create. But then on the 7s, what we're going to do is have kind of like a morning lauds and evening vespers. So each day at 7 o'clock in the morning for about a half an hour, we'll break and we'll read through scripture together. Probably have poetry, and then maybe a little bit of lectio work in that time together. And then that'll be the morning thing, and the evening will be similar. Also have some call and response worship, or call and response readings. And then it will have a little bit of time of worship each evening as well. And so we're going to do that on the 7s all the way through the week of Holy Week, 7 in the morning and 7 in the evening. And the only other thing that I think I would say about this is I want to just put out a call for hosts. If you're someone that's in the church and you've participated in these in the past, or you've helped us set them up, or you've helped us source art, or whatever the thing is, however you've participated, we would love to have you serve in the prayer rooms as a host. And what this would look like is each slot would be a couple hours long, and you'd be responsible for either opening or closing the space on those 4-hour slots, so it would be 2 hours. And if you come in and open, you'd light the candles, you'd set up the room. We'd have directions and be able to walk you through that. And then if you're closing, you would be the person that kind of blows out the candles, which is very important. I could tell you a story about a Good Friday when that didn't happen. And it was a close call, friends. It was a close call. You'd have to go down the stairs, let people in, but then I think even more than that, we're just asking you to be kind of an attentive presence in the space and be praying for the people that are in the space, kind of moving through it, and then also be available to pray with them if they like prayer. So if you're open to hosting. Please email me, or you can just come talk to me after this or at any point over the next few weeks. And we would love to get you signed up to just host one of those 2-hour spaces. So that's it. Thanks, guys. The clicking?
Okay, Amanda. Chris, you want to hand that microphone off to Amanda?
Yes.
We're going to do a quick financial update that I'll kind of hang out up here as well.
Hello. All the things we've just heard and then we'll hear tonight are really, it's great to hear all of the ministry updates, and what we get to talk about now is kind of what makes that possible, the giving that happens week in and week out. And so we wanted to, this will be our first detailed financial update in 2025. So we'll get to see where we're at with that. So we'll go ahead and start. So this, to me, when we saw these numbers for January and February, was really encouraging to have given so close to what we have spent for those months. It was kind of a big ask for 2025, a jump in our expenses, bringing staff on more full time and a number of other ministry things. So, and our giving, just to give you a context, in 2024, the average giving from January through November, not including December, because you'll see in a second, that is a big number, but was closer to 39. So to have been able to jump to close to 49 the first 2 months was just really encouraging. So, okay. So this is more, most of these are graphs, but I wanted to include some numbers for people who like a little more detail. So the earlier slide was just, it was actual giving and actual expenses. Here we're comparing to the budget that we set, so the things we anticipated to happen, to see how close did we come to that. So you can see that on the income side, the high majority is the giving. We didn't quite meet that for the first 2 months, about $8,700 under what we had budgeted. But the expenses also were under a little bit, so at the end of the day, January and February, we were under about $5,300. So while it would be great to break even every month, that number still is really encouraging to us, because we'll show in just a second, but we know that in past years we have been able to make that up, but just wanted to show you where we're at with that. And the other thing that's encouraging to me about this chart here is that in 2024, our staff was trying to be really careful with expenses as far as how we budgeted them, and really tightened them up a lot, and it ended up just not being possible, partly because of inflation and everything else that all of us have dealt with. But we tried to be more realistic this year with 2025, and just knowing that things cost a little bit more. And so it's encouraging to see that while we were under that a little bit for the 2 months. So, but we were pretty close. So I feel like so far, only 2 months in, but it feels like the budget was a good estimate. So, okay. So here is our giving, and you've seen something similar to this in the past, but we broke out the last 2 years separate from each other. We'd been doing an average to just see the pattern. And part of this, I just like to run this because I'm curious, what it looks like, and it also helps us try to understand kind of what things look like throughout the year for us. So a couple of things that you might notice is that there are some things that have been in common the last couple of years. You can especially see, months of April and May, a little bit down. June, both years were up, and I think that's because by the middle of the year, we said, hey, we need to make up a little bit of ground here. And so what we have found, so June, and then you can see December, that's probably the biggest thing you notice, is just such a large number. It's 3 to 4 times what our monthly average was last year for sure, and the year before, I think it was close. So we have been so blessed at Union Chapel that every single time we've ever asked made a need known, it has always been met. And so you can see that reflected here. In December is the time probably where we have done that the most. And these hikes in December really got us just about where we needed to be for the year. So that wasn't above and beyond. We really needed that, the money for the year for those. So one of the things, and this is something we're just, I don't know, kind of thinking about, but one of the things that crosses our mind is do we need to, have that big jump at the end of the year, or are there ways that maybe we could do a better job communicating, not just maybe in family meetings even, but for the whole church on some kind of a frequency to say, here's where we're at. But we also know that for some people, December is just a month that they like to give, that makes sense for them to give. So we don't know exactly, what drives all of this pattern, but we're watching it, and we may make some changes based on that. Did you want to say anything else about that, Adam?
No, I think that's a good recap. Yeah, I think another way of saying that is just we recognize and really appreciate the generosity too, and we feel like there is a part that we play in continued communication. We want to continue to grow and be a little more consistent and out in front of things a little bit, and not wait 3, 4, 5 months for something for us to get behind and then go, oh, we got to make up all of this ground. But also there's just a natural part to December. Will probably always be just a natural month in which people want to give generously, and so it's not us dissing that by any means. We're really grateful for it, but the consistency throughout the year also helps with being able to come in towards the end of the year closer to the goal of what we're hoping to meet. And then, some of what we dream about is to go, what would it look like to be really close to our goals or right at our goals at the end of December, and then to be able to give opportunities for generosity that are dreaming, that are above and beyond, that are about, hey, here are some ways that we, if people are interested in increased generosity still in December, to not be emergency makeup, but to be more about vision, and here's what we could see kind of doing with those gifts in December.
Great. And then the last slide looks at where we at with our cash reserves. So a while back, we had set a goal of having 4 months worth of expenses in cash available for the church's needs. And so this is the reflection. You'll see the red line is 4 months of expenses, and it's looking at kind of the most recent 4 months. So that's why you see that red line go up, because as our expenses go up, the amount for the reserves goal goes up. And then the white line you can see is the bank balance there. So it's not something we have to hit. In fact, there's lots of different perspectives on even what the responsible thing to do is there. I think, Adam, you've mentioned before, just the idea even of, for a church, you maybe don't want too much there, because that means you're not spending it on ministry needs, so to hold that back. But there's also a prudence and a responsibility that we're trying to balance with that. So I think that's it for me.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda. If you have questions about that, just lock them away in your brain. We'll have space to ask questions around that towards the end. So a couple of updates about the Main Street Promise Project and parking here. So the Main Street Promise Project, if you're not familiar, is a very expensive project that the city received grant money for, and it's going to be multiple years that's already begun. So the construction that you see at the north end of Main Street and the construction that you see one block south of us at this south end of Main Street is a part of that project. And it's going to be affecting us for some time. And so just kind of want to talk about that a little bit and kind of what we can be expecting as a community. So phase one of the Main Street Promise project is completely replacing all the sewer and water utilities on Main Street. So that means digging up the entire street and replacing all of it, all the sewer and water that runs up and down Main Street. And so the work for phase one on our block, so you're seeing phase one work on the already on the north and south end of Main Street, but the work on our block is set to begin April 28th through May 5th, somewhere in that time frame. And this is always changing, but this is the most updated one. For a very short amount of time, we thought it was going to be on Holy Week, and we were stressing a little bit, like, please no. But the week after Easter is when this could potentially be starting. And so what will that look like? Well, it looks like our sidewalks will remain open, but our entire street will be tore up. So there will not be any parking. You'll see the road closed signs similar to what you already see. If you're curious about what it looks like and what it feels like, you can go kind of walk those spaces and see the work that's going on there. So I think it's supposed to last somewhere around 7 weeks or so for phase one for us, in which they're doing that. And then phase two for us, which is a lot more intense, which is a complete replacement of the street surface and the sidewalks and the lighting and all of the outdoor furniture and all of the art installations and all of that. If you're interested in seeing this, you can just Google Main Street Promise. And you can see all of the mock-ups for all of this. It's really going to be an amazing project in terms of what it will do for downtown, but it's going to mean a couple years of us having to live in inconvenience around the construction elements of that. So that phase two is scheduled to begin somewhere between September and December is what they're telling us of this year. And then it could likely last until the spring of 2027. So that's when the entire street is supposed to be completed. So that doesn't mean that we'll be living in that intense amount of construction until spring of 2027. It's possible. They are trying to kind of take things a block at a time so that they're not closing down all of Main Street all at once and leaving some space there. There will always be access to our building, so we're never going to lose access to our building. That access will just change and look different from week to week in terms of how we'll be getting in and out of the building. But at least through this initial phase, the sidewalks are the complete sidewalk will be open. We are also in conversation with the development, the developer of the Spanky's building on the corner, because some of our concern is when the street shuts down here in a few weeks, all you're going to have, the only way that you're going to be able to access Union Chapel is via the sidewalk, and currently that sidewalk is blocked because of the construction happening on the corner. It's a little bit of a nuisance right now, but it would become a huge nuisance if that continues through while the Main Street Promise project is going at the same time. And so we're in conversation with them about just access. It would mean the only way to be able to get into our building would be walking up the sidewalk from this direction, which kind of forces all of our parking and places where, and just access in general for folks, ADA folks and elderly folks and people with little kids. All of that stuff just becomes a concern. So we're in conversation with the city around these things and working. I was in contact with that developer this week, and so that they're aware of our concerns and wanting to be good neighbors and be related that way. So we'll continue to keep you updated on any of this, but just so you can be anticipating, this is all going to start happening, and we're holding all of it. I would just say in general, like, we want to be excited for the things that are going on in downtown and what it means for the life of our city. And these are good things. The kind of the renewal of the city in these ways. And it also means, we're going to be put out in some ways for a little while as well, and just knowing and being prepared for that, and doing the best we can through that. So one of the elements that's connected to this that I want to make you aware of that has a financial impact on us is that they are replacing the sewer line, the city sewer line that runs up and down Main Street, and they are covering 5 feet of connection to our sewer that they'll be replacing as well, the line that runs from our building to connect to the city sewer. And we did receive a letter from them this year, basically saying, or last year, basically saying, now is the time to replace your sewer line that runs from your building and connects to the city sewer line. Because if anything happens, then you're going to be responsible for digging up and doing all that and ruining this brand new thing that we just built as well. And so it was a very strong encouragement of like, now is the time for you to replace your 100-year-old sewer line. And so our elder team felt like that was the right call, and so we did build that cost into our budget for this year, but the estimated cost for that is about 11 grand for us to cover this year, and so that was an added cost that kind of got rolled into our building line item. And so it's a good thing in terms of like, it's good to do that. It seems like the right time to do that, but also just for you to be aware that's part of kind of what we're facing this year. So that's happening that way. Then I wanted to give you more great news. And that is there's some parking changes coming in downtown that we're aware of. So recently an article came out. Well, there was a parking advisory committee meeting, and then there was an article in the Columbian as well announcing that paid parking is something that the city is going to begin doing on the weekends. They had an independent company come out and do an audit of the parking situation in downtown Vancouver, and talking about the congestion, the lack of rollover on the weekends in the downtown core, and especially on the waterfront, that people park and then they stay, and then it doesn't make room for new people to come in and refresh that space. So the decision that the city's parking advisory commission or committee made was to move towards charging for parking on the weekends in the hopes of creating more turnover. Certainly would mean more revenue for the city as well. The start date for this hasn't been set, but it feels a little bit like a sucker punch to our community, and so our elders have drafted a letter to the city. We're just making some final adjustments to it that will be going out this week, expressing our concerns and essentially saying like, hey, this feels like a double whammy for us to be not only in the added congestion that's going to be created for 2 years related to the Main Street Promise project, but then to charge our congregation. So the letter essentially says, this is how it's going to impact our community. And not to be alarmist in this way, but if you're looking at, $360 for 2 hours, people who come and volunteer on a Sunday morning can be here upwards of 4 hours. And so that's upwards of, if you're volunteering every week, $30 a month for your family in a time where there's already some economic hardship, and just being aware that this has an effect on our community, and us wanting to communicate that to the city, as well as a letter that communicates we care about the city, and we want to be good neighbors, and we want to help work together with the city for a good solution for this. We're not a real big player downtown. It's not like we got a lot of muscle or force that way, and so who knows if a letter will even be read or paid attention to, but we're going to do the best we can to get that in front of the people that that have the ability to influence this decision. It sounds like the window's still somewhat open for us to influence it, and so we're going to do everything we can to try and find some solutions here. Related to this as well, we didn't go into it just yet, but if some of these things go into effect, we're also just as an elder team looking at parking solutions in general. So are there some other ways we can be looking at available lots downtown, shuttling people, and also making our community aware of like what are the parking options downtown? Like, does our community know where the free parking lots are? Do you know where the more affordable options might be if you're not able to pay that fee? And so that would all be part of future communication from us of just helping you be aware of things that are going on that way. So certainly not a fun announcement to make, but good to, hopefully good to just keep you aware of some of that. So, okay. Have a quick sabbatical update that Adam Leakty is going to give. And we had our first elder retreat a month ago now, somewhere in there, and Adam said his last name, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I feel like our entire community has been saying Lichty for 7 years, and Adam was finally like, no, it's Leakty. So you got to get it in your brain. It's Adam Leakty, and Adam's going to talk a little bit about some sabbatical stuff.
Yeah, if you want to do it like Swiss proper, then it's like 2.5 syllables. It's like Lichty, but don't worry about that. Yes, so in keeping with a culture of sabbatical and making that a priority in our community, we have now a policy that's official and approved by the Elder Board. It's also kind of a living document, so as we need to make accommodations for what makes sense for the community, we can do that. But just in short, in terms of timelines, that policy is for a pastor that's had 7 years of full-time ministry to be eligible to then submit a proposal to the elder team for a sabbatical. And Chris Lepore has submitted a proposal for that, and that's currently under review by the team. But I think, Chris, after that bacon and nap, you're just good now, right? Okay. All right. So anyway, that's just something we're in the process of reviewing, but we just wanted to just make the community aware of that, and that we're reviewing that proposal, and we'll keep you updated on once we have a decision on that. That could be as early as this summer, and so we just wanted to bring that to your attention as soon as we had that. In the long run, our desire is for those to have kind of like a year out for making that decision and making the church aware of that. But with pastors that have had kind of a lot more than 7 years of full-time ministry, we're kind of in a backlog situation at this point. So yeah, we just wanted to make you aware of that, and we'll keep you updated as we have more to share.
Okay. More ministry updates. Wanted to let you know about, and you may have seen some of these things come through, but wanted to let you know about some apprenticeship groups that are coming our way this spring. So there's actually more planned for the whole year, but I'm just going to give you the spring. Three groups in particular. From the Inside Out is a spiritual formation apprenticeship group. And I won't go into too much detail on all of these. This is going to be led by a team of people. It is a Renovare curriculum. If you're familiar with Renovare, Richard Foster, Nathan Foster, kind of realm of kind of spiritual formation stuff. This is where it comes through. And then we have a couple people in our community who have, Neil has gone through Renovare's program. Ben is currently going through Renovare's program. And so there's a lot of familiarity this way. But we really felt like this did a great job of kind of meeting a need in our community for some of that integration space in our apprenticeship group. Certainly it hits probably more than just integration, but is really like, what does it look like to kind of take a deeper dive on some of these really primary questions? Who is God? Who am I? And what does it look like to kind of live in this space? And so these will be really intentional groups, meeting on Sundays, beginning April 27th. There'll be a couple little breaks in there, if I remember correctly, for one break on Mother's Day, yes, because we love our moms. And so that lasts for, sorry, Jenny, 6 weeks. And the cost is quite minimal. I think it's going to be about $5. And so if that sounds like something you might be interested in, registration is already open for that. You can find that on the Church Center app. Our very own Dr. Alan Hutchison is going to be leading a learning group on how to read your Bible. And so this is something he and I have been talking about for probably over a year now, actually. But Alan has a passion for just helping people get a sense of how to make their way through these ancient texts. And so what does it look like to come to the different genres, like just basic Bible reading principles, but also not basic. There'll be plenty in there to learn from, especially if you've been a believer in reading your Bible for a long time, to be able to learn from Alan and kind of dig in on this. So that's going to be on Monday nights, starting the week after Easter as well. And then we have a marriage course coming up. This is an alpha curriculum that we're going to be using starting May 7th, and that'll run through June 18th. Childcare will be provided for this, and this is really for any and all married couples and even people who are thinking about marriage as well. This would be appropriate for that. The way it's designed is actually really cool. It's kind of designed as date nights to some degree. So you're doing it all together, but the way that you'll be in a large group of people who are all working through this curriculum together, but you'll be seated at a table with your spouse and moving through the questions and the curriculum together. And we've been talking to a few other churches that have been using this and have just found it to be a really helpful resource for marriages. And this isn't something that we've done a lot of in the past, or really much at all. I think we've done one marriage retreat in the life of our church. So we're excited about creating some space for people at any stage of their marriage to be able to kind of come back to some of this and dig in a little bit. So, and that's going to be led by various people in our community as well, pastoral staff and lay leaders. So we're excited about those offerings this spring. And those first two are already on the Church Center app. The marriage course will be loaded up sometime soon. Okay. Mr. Benjamin Ritter, our full-time youth director, now has a couple of updates. It's on.
Why do I get claps and no one else gets claps? That makes me feel weird. Good to see you guys. So that was your
me.
mic. A few updates. We have summer camp coming up in, 5 months now. Who's counting? And these camps have been a beautiful thing in the life of our church, just deep investment in the spiritual formation of our youth from not just myself, but plenty of other people who don't get paid to do this stuff. And so it takes a lot to make these things happen, not only from a planning standpoint, like I usually start in February, so I've been going at it for a couple weeks now, and then from a volunteer standpoint, like I said, I think last year we had something like 40 volunteers, and a lot of people just being really generous with their time, taking time off work, or finding someone to watch their kids for a few days, grandparents or whatever, so that they could be there. And so with that said, I've already reached out to some of you maybe, and maybe I haven't yet. If you're interested in this at all, or if your heart is being tugged at, like, how can I get involved with the church in a really low commitment way? Like, I'm talking freeing up your trunk and your car space and driving students to camp, and then a few days later picking them up and driving them home. Just a couple hours commitment. It could be helping with check-in at the front doors. We usually need about 2 or 3 people for that. Could be cabin leaders, could be kitchen work, So it can be anywhere from like 4 days commitment. It could be anywhere from like 1 or 2 days of just a couple hours. And again, it might seem like, okay, like I have to sit with a bunch of 6th graders in a car for 2 hours, you're telling me, and they're going to be screaming their heads off, and that doesn't sound pleasant. But I will say, I've been so encouraged over the last couple years seeing people who have no connection to students in our church and maybe haven't been connected with young people at all in years, and seeing the ways that they were just like, this is a whole part of our church that I've never even met or interacted with, and they're like, this is awesome, and like I want to be a part of this kind of thing, next time you do this. And so it's just been a source of encouragement to me and many others, and I want to invite you into that. If you're interested at all, you can reach out to me. Next up is a youth confirmation course. That's not the official title. I don't know if you grew up in a church community that had some sort of confirmation course or program. The idea of making kind of an official, I don't want to say hoop to jump through, but something to make official, like the decision to follow Jesus and to say, yeah, I identify as an apprentice of Jesus, and that's not something that I'm like, when I graduate high school and become an adult, kind of question, do I believe in Jesus? What does it even mean to follow him? The long-standing statistic for probably the last decade has been, I think it's somewhere around 2 to 3 out of 10 young people, when they graduate high school, come back to church. So that means about 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 never come back. And that has kind of been, similar to the conversation that Adam's brought up recently, people thinking that youth ministry is just kind of dead, with Gen Z and Gen Alpha not really seeming to come to church. The interesting thing is I just read an article by the New York Times, and it was quoting a political scientist who was saying that the rise of religious nuns, people who's not actual nuns, but people who don't identify with any sort of spirituality or religion, those people have already left the church. And for a long time, it was like, this is on the up and up. People are giving up on religion in America. And this political scientist was making the claim that actually the research seems to be showing they've all left. And Gen Z has already been shown to have more openness to spirituality and to the Bible than any generation since the early 20th century, I think. And so there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to step up and go, what does it look like to not just put on a fun youth group on Tuesday nights every week and a couple cool camps a year, but to make some really serious commitments, not as parents, not as a youth group, but as a community, to saying, let's invest in these young people. And so so that they can have a longevity in their apprenticeship with Jesus. It's not something that kind of flash in a pan, they graduate and it goes out. So there will be way more details to come with that. I have so much I could talk about that I won't yet, but I'm going to run a pilot program on this next month with a few students just to kind of get some feedback and do a little bit of live action research or whatever you want to call it. So more details to come on that, but if you want to know more, get coffee and I can talk your ear off about it. Let's do it.
Jenny Seitz.
Hi, guys. I don't have to do, oh, you do this, great.
Oh, do you want the clicker? Do you want the power?
You're
Okay.
good. I don't want the power. It's all good. A couple things that we wanted to put in front of you all tonight. Super excited. This is something that Ben and I have been talking about for a while now. But we are going to be implementing a program called Ministry Safe, and it is really a sexual abuse awareness training, kind of a foundational training for our volunteers that work with children in facilitating safe environments for the minors in our care. This has been something that we've looked at different programs. There's a plethora of them out there. If any of you have, coached youth soccer or anything else, I'm sure you've gone through something like this. But, we have our background checks and things that we've had in place for years and years, but really wanting a more robust system as we continue to grow that just establishes a baseline of common information and education and really what this program is going to allow us to do is have policies and procedures that are streamlined through from our littlest all the way up through our high school volunteers. This program will have a hub that allows us to track who has gone through the training, so it'll just be part of our onboarding process of working with our youth and children. So we're excited to get that rolling out. It's about an hour of time that you'll be dedicating to go through a video. You'll be watching that, you'll be taking a little quiz, and then it'll send a certificate to us that says, yes, I've completed the training, I know this information, I'm on board with all of this. This will also be what we run our background checks through. We've had a different company doing that in the past, but this will just be a one-stop shop for kind of all of our volunteer trainings that we're going to be going through. So Ben and I have completed it. Ben has completed it twice because I did it under his name. Well done, Ben. We've done it, and the rest of our staff will be working our way through it over the next handful of months. But if you work with our youth or children, kind of keep your eye out because this will be rolling out your way as well. There's an $8 charge per person that the church will be covering to get everybody onboarded with this. But we've built that we're building that into our budget as we speak. So yeah, really the goal behind this is prioritizing the social and emotional well-being of our children and youth in our care. And this is a robust system that will help us facilitate that. So yeah, we're excited about that. Next up, just, kind of an end of the year update, our Chapel Kids curriculum. We know that we've said, and we continue to say, Chapel Kids exists to cultivate the love of God in the hearts and minds of our children, and that we do that. We believe that children are spiritually nurtured in the context of family and community, and that happens in different ways at different developmental milestones through our children's growing up years. Curriculum is always one of the trickiest and most wonderful parts of that. So we've tried a few over the last handful of years, and really this year, if you've been in our classrooms, you will have seen and heard that we've gone back to God's Big Story, which has been one that's carried us for a lot of years. So that's the Little Peg People, if you guys are familiar with that. And this curriculum believes, like we do, that faith formation happens primarily in the home, but that partnering with parents is an important piece of that we get to do. And so this curriculum walks through the arc of Scripture from Genesis to Revelation through the lens of Jesus, and walks out at developmentally appropriate levels with the students. Those different passages of Scripture, has a lot of wondering questions, really believes that children are able to engage with the Holy Spirit and draws that out in them. So we're finishing the year through June with this curriculum. If you want a little bit more information, it's actually linked on our Chapel Kids page on our website. We don't often talk about our website because we don't do a whole lot there unless you're new and you're like, where are we meeting? But if you go to UC Kids on our website, there is a link that takes you directly to that curriculum. You'll see that it's actually an Anglican curriculum. So there are parts of it that we are utilizing and parts that we aren't. We as a church community do talk about the church calendar, but not quite to the degree that our Anglican brothers and sisters do. And that is a large part of this curriculum that we don't emphasize quite as much. But when it comes around, Lent, we do talk about Lent, and we have some resources and things like that. So one of the things that Heather and the team are really passionate about is resourcing families. So you'll see, again, some book clubs coming out, some take-home materials coming out, things like that. But we just wanted to give you a heads up. That's what we'll be continuing with through June. And then for summer, we have some kind of exciting things that we're kicking around that are a little more light and fun, involving a little bit more of our community participation possibly as well. So that's what I've got.
You can go to Tim, yeah. Okay. One last thing that I wanted to talk about was just community care and some things that have been a part of our conversations at both the deacon and an elder level. And some of this, I think, comes from our experience through COVID. But I think with just seeing a lot of changes at a societal level, a lot of people facing job insecurity, potential health insurance insecurity, Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, just a whole bunch of things that feel very up in the air right now. As a community, as a church, us saying like, it's probably good for us to be talking about those things at a leadership level before things happen. And that isn't out of fear or anxiety, but rather out of a space of going like, we want to be a community that's well prepared to take care of each other, really for whatever comes our way, and to take care of our community as well. And so it's not like I have something to tell you, like this is what we've decided to do. But this is mostly me just saying, I want you to know, like, our staff, our elders, our deacons are talking about these things, about what does this look like. And so maybe just a little window into some of the brainstorming that's going on, a little bit of talking about creating some spaces for us that exist online for sharing needs within our community. We have a staff, deacon, elders Slack channel where a lot of prayer requests get shared, or where we're communicating about, like Diane would be a great example, like you heard in the prayers of the people this week, right? Of like sharing the news, like, oh, we found out that Diane had a stroke, and then it's, I'm going to go visit Diane, and then everybody's saying like, we're praying for Diane, and then going, I'm bringing a meal, we're going to help figure out her phone situation, I've checked in with her daughter Amy, right? There's all of this kind of communication that's going on at a leadership level, and some of what we've been talking about is like, what does that look like to create something that feels more robust for our entire community, to be able to give places for people to share needs, to share prayer needs. Maybe a kind of like online prayer wall that's for our community, for people to be able to say like, this is what I'd really love for some people to pray for me about this week, and then an opportunity to respond to some of those places, or I really need some help in this area. And so we've been talking about that. We've been talking about our benevolence funds, and just what does it look like to be ready and able to care for people that get put in some difficult circumstances as it relates to their finances. And then Jenny especially has been having a lot of conversations at a kind of outside of the walls of Union Chapel, at like ways that are more kind of missional community care, that aren't necessarily focused on caring for those who call Union Chapel home, but going, how are we as a community prepared to care for immigrant populations, refugee populations in Vancouver, and people who are in need. And so, again, as I said, I don't have a whole lot to say like, oh, this is what we've landed on, but rather to say like, I think it's important for you to know like that we're thinking about these things, that it's on our hearts and our minds, and wanting to be prepared for whatever may come our way, and being able to care for each other well, and even prepare and to do things to be well connected in that sense, to care for each other. So I think that's also something that we're interested in hearing from you as well, as you think about ways that we can be caring for each other better, and not just being a leadership discussion, but talking about like, what does it look like for us to share ideas that way too. So that is actually the last update that I have, unless somebody wanted to add to that conversation, something that I was missing. Okay. So, new world record, getting to Q&R at an hour, you guys, is amazing. So, this is a space for just like, here's an observation I had, here's a question that I have. If you want to know more detail, or it doesn't need to be related to anything that's connected to what we've shared here tonight. If you've got something else that's on your heart or mind, you're welcome to ask questions about that. So again, kind of going back through our agenda, our sermon series, Lent and Holy Week, the prayer room, our financial update, the Main Street Promise and parking situation, sabbatical stuff, ministry updates for youth and children, and then community care stuff. So, anybody have any questions? Tim. Hold on, the other Tim's got to get you a microphone so folks online can hear you.
Regarding the, is that too much? Regarding the Main Street Promise parking situation.
Yes.
Okay. Vancouver Downtown Association, what's do you know what their attitude is toward fees? Especially for the restaurants and things like that are operating on weekends?
Yeah, so I spoke to Michael, who is the executive director of the VDA, this last week, and because I had that same exact question, I was just like, is there like a lot of backlash happening? He's like, it's actually pretty split. There are some people that are like, yeah, this is what we need. Some businesses that are for it, and there's others that are very much like, this is bad. This is bad for downtown. This isn't going to increase by any means the flow to our businesses on the weekend. This is going to deter people from wanting to come down to the farmers market. It's going to deter people to want to come down and use the restaurants on the weekends by just creating another barrier. And so we're definitely not the only like dissenting voice or like hey, wait a minute sort of voice. But it's also not a monolith in terms of the downtown response from what the VDA was kind of telling us, that it's a mixed bag. So we definitely have like downtown stakeholders who are part of our community, people who own businesses, people like Michael and Crystal, who are 2 blocks north of us, that we're in conversation with as well, of kind of like, how is this affecting you? I think that is one of the questions that our leadership does have for our community, though, is like, how does this affect you practically? If you want to be able to speak to like, this is how it would affect us, or how it feels to us, would love to hear your input that way too. So it's important for us to hear so we can represent our community well. Along those lines, someone online.
Yes, someone online. So David Phillips said that there's a city council meeting on Monday, March 17th, 6:30 to 8:30 at 415 West 6th.
That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a city council meeting tomorrow. If anyone wants to, show up.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in that, for sure. I am coaching soccer during that time, so I am not volunteering myself for that. I might be able to make the next one. But if anybody's interested in that, please feel free to chime in.
Also, Kim Thompson made the comment that she thought that Portland was free on Sundays before 1 p.m.
Say that again?
That she thought Portland was free on Sundays before 1 p.m., and she's not sure if that might be the case or a possibility.
Yeah, so that's, as of right now, what the parking advisory has said is that they wouldn't do different times from what they're doing during the weekdays, that they, for the sake of uniformity, that they would, do what they're already doing Monday through Friday, which is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so, but that, we did list in our letter, we are listing in our letter things that we feel like are potential solutions, and that's one of the things we listed is kind of freeing up the morning space, the potential of kind of creating permits for our volunteers, the potential of, could this be just a zone? Because really the primary concern, it seemed like, was the waterfront. Like, could this just be for the waterfront? And could you leave downtown alone? And so we made a couple suggestions that way of like, hey, are you thinking about some of these things that might be an in-between? And so we have listed those in our letter. But yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, if it started at 1, it would be a whole lot different feel, for sure. But it wouldn't really affect us much. Yeah.
Could it potentially be helpful for anyone who's willing in the body to write a letter as well, just saying this is how it will practically affect us as congregants of the church, outside of just the professional side of things.
Yeah.
The clergy
Yeah, I think it's great. If you want to, if you want to do something like that individually, we'll write something that officially is kind of representing our congregation. But I think if you're saying like, hey, I'm a member of this church who, you know, is downtown on the weekends this much, and this is how it's going to affect me and my family, I think it certainly would not hurt. So, yeah, so that's part of what we're tracing down. I think at this point we'll be sending our letter to, and we could give you all this information, but we'll send our letter to the mayor, to the city council and city manager, and the parking advisory committee. So we're just going to send it to all them. Yeah. Yes, Jack.
Last year, we had the big hit for the roof replacement,
Yeah.
so that really kind of didn't show, but I mean, people stepped up when we covered it, so at least we don't have that to redo this year.
Yeah.
And didn't we have a reprice on the loan for the mortgage? Didn't we?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. You would be the one to remember that, Jack. Yes, so we have a reprice on the loan. So essentially we have a 15-year mortgage, but there's a 5-year balloon, which is standard for commercial loans just across the board. And so that means a refi every 5 years. So we are going to lose our super sweet interest rate that we got back in 2020, because it was looking a lot better back then from an interest rate standpoint. So I met with Brad Martin, who is our contact at Cass Bank, which is who we carry our note with, as well as who we bank through. And Brad helped us as best as he could try and estimate what that would look like for us this year, of like how our payment might change kind of based off of where he sees things being. We do not need to refi until October. So our process would start probably in August of kind of starting to do what we need that way. We won't be needing to get a new appraisal. There'll be basically zero cost for the refi to us this year. But our, unless something drastic changes, which it's not likely to, our payment's going to significantly shift come the end of the year this year. So we projected for that and built that into the last 3 months of our budget. And then it'll be obviously be a part of what we're looking at for next year as well. I think, sorry, I'm a little bit going off the top of my head here, Amanda. Do you remember that number? Oh, I think it was somewhere around $1,200 a month difference on our payment. But I'm sorry, I'm kind of shooting from the hip on that, Jack. I could get you the actual number on that. But in terms of how it'll affect us in 2025, not a whole lot. Now, one other thing that I think would be helpful to bring to your attention, and I'll go back to the financial slides for this. I'll go back to this one. We'll come up for that refi they'll be looking at our books in September of this year. And the primary issue that they're looking at is this right here. They're going to be looking at our cash on hand. They're going to be looking at our reserves. That'll be the biggest indicator for like where our interest rate gets set for the coming 5 years. And so when we're also kind of thinking and planning for that, like where do we want to be? We'd really love to be in a strong place in September, where we've closed that gap and we have a higher percentage. Like if we're in that 4-month range, we can save ourselves 0.25%, 0.5%, just by having more reserves at that point of the year. And so we did a little bit of the math on like, would it make more sense to try and refi earlier in the year, and in a time where our books are looking a little stronger, like if it's looking like, hey, in February, March, April, things are looking really good, try and push through a refi and try and get that better rate sooner and lock that in. But as we kind of parse that out on the long haul for 5 years, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense because we'd be bringing that larger payment starting earlier in the year. So it's kind of 6.5, you know. But great question and a great thing to be aware of, and part of why we're wanting to kind of build some of the consistency of the year so that we're in a good financial spot when we need to refi. Yeah. Jan.
Just a quickie question. I know that you have a balloon payment every 5 years, but one of the keys will be the amortization. Do you have any idea yet what kind of amortization this loan will be over?
That's a great question. That's probably something I should know off the top of my head that I don't.
15 years.
Yeah, it's a 15-year loan with a 5-year balloon. So that's where it is set. Whether that means we're actually done paying off at 15, I can't remember. Or am I not understanding the question? I am not the financial genius, so Amanda.
If it's a 15-year loan, then the amortization would be set on the 15 years.
On the 15 years, yeah. And so we own just a little over $1 million at this point left on our mortgage here. The value of our buildings at last appraisal was around 3.2, I think, if I remember correctly. And so we have good loan to value at present, which puts us in a strong position for. So those things aren't major things in question. It really is the cash reserves will be the primary thing that Cass Bank's looking at for us. So, yeah, great questions. Jerry.
I'm wondering if you shared this information with the church at large, if people who usually give more in November and December would be willing to start giving more earlier so that we can get our cash reserves up before they start looking at it, if that would help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it'd be good for us to probably get the brass tacks on, like, what does that actually mean in terms of percentage point, and how does that affect our monthly payment, and how would that stack up over 5 years? Like, what would it mean for us to be, what would we save versus lose if we were in a good position come September? So, yeah, I agree, and we'll continue to talk about that as an elder team. All great questions and statements. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Jerry. Yeah, that's great.
I'm just thinking that if the Sunday parking plan does go into place and there's a 2-hour maximum, we're going to have to tighten up the Sunday morning service.
Yeah. Oh. Da-doom-tsh. Chris Lepore said the same thing on our Slack message today.
And all the children's volunteers said, amen.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a 2-hour limit that is never enforced. So, once, yeah, I mean, yes, you have to you can only pay for 2 hours at a time, but you can through the app or through actually going out and reloading it. You can get an additional 2 hours, and I've never received a ticket for adding time. So yes, it is one of those. It is one of those things, and I'm not saying that as like, so we're going to keep our service time at the time it's going to be. The bigger issue is probably for volunteers. You got. It's not going to make a difference. Service time, cutting down the service time by half an hour or something like that. If you're coming in early for a worship team practice and you're staying all the way to the end, some of those details. So that's all part of what we're communicating in our letter of like, these are the ways this affects us for sure. Yep. Hold on one second, Tracy. We'll get you on the microphone. I know how badly you want to be on the microphone.
No. Maybe I missed if you said this earlier, but are we able to talk to local businesses that are not open on Sundays and use their parking lots?
Yeah, so that's a little bit about, Melanie's on a mission right now of kind of fact-finding and researching what's available. There's things like there's the parking lot behind Biggs, which probably has 25 spots. That's a little bit of what we're looking at. What are the private parking spaces that exist that we might be able to look at? Like, this is kind of drawing from my involvement with Imago Dei in Portland, but they had a whole bunch of development happen around them. They had very little street parking, and they did that. They found 2 private lots that they paid for as a church to have, like, this is ours and access to ours, and then they had, they even had shuttle buses that ran from those spaces. For us, there are free spaces. There's a 2-hour free lot kind of behind Elements here. There's free parking by the library and free parking on the fort. But as you know, the further you get away into those free parking areas, it's more about shuttling people and getting people here too. So we're trying to look at all of the, potential variants that way of, like, what are the options that are available to us. There's also, part of making our congregation aware of, like, the cinema parking lot does charge, but it's going to charge less than, probably what you'd pay on street parking. And so, yeah, just making our congregation aware of those things. So, yeah, it's good. What else? Anything else?
Are we the only church involved?
No. Formerly Compass Church, Main Street Church would be, I think that's what they're called now. Main Street Church would be affected. I know Kesed has a parking lot, but still a good chunk of their congregation still has to find street parking. The Catholic Church, same, they have a parking lot, but not everyone fits in their parking lot. So yeah, that could be part of what we're exploring too, is like, what would it look like to join voices with other churches as well? So this is all a little, we're a little bit reacting to this. I don't feel like we were quite as far out in front of this as we maybe could have been by having our ear to the ground on the parking situation. So you're kind of coming in mid-process for us a little bit too, and we're trying to get caught up and just get moving as quickly as we can. So we'll keep working on all of these avenues. Yeah. Yeah. Offering to carpool with folks, some of those sorts of things might alleviate some of that as well. Oh, Darcy.
I'm just wondering, this is probably for Jenny or the chapel kids. Did you have any luck getting new teachers for the 1st through 3 class?
Yeah, I was just talking to the team about this. We did. We had some people step up, which was really, really wonderful, and some others willing to shuffle from other classrooms. So I think while we can always use more people loving on our kiddos, I think our staffing is at the baseline need right now. So yeah, thank you.
And Ben, what about you? Because you were looking for a few extra female leaders.
Yeah, still looking for ideally 2 female Tuesday night youth group leaders. It's an 1.5-hour commitment each week, just about. So if you know anyone, or if you were one of them, come to me. I will buy you a coffee or food.
That's great. Anyone else? Also doesn't have to be questions. It could be comments, statements.
Will there be an extra call going out for Easter for doing 2 services, or is that handled through volunteers already?
Right now it's handled through our volunteer systems and team leaders and all of that's happening. We are looking at, because most of our families lean hard on the 11 o'clock service with the feast and also just with scheduling for kids, we'll probably look at a little bit more of a pared down chapel kids team for 9 a.m. And so we're not going to be running like full strength for 9 a.m., but we will need kind of all hands on deck for 11. And so, but they're kind of dealing with that individually. Melanie's way out in front of and Jesse and Keeley with hospitality stuff. They've been meeting, they started meeting weeks ago about Easter Sunday and the feast and pulling together teams and volunteers and from a creative standpoint, and then also from like what's needed standpoint in terms of help. And so, yeah, that's all kind of being handled individually. Certainly, if you want to be involved and do some extra or throw down a little extra on Easter, there's plenty of places to connect that. We'd be happy to connect you.
Yeah, I know Chris will also be talking with people serving in the choir, and we're trying to coordinate between choir and volunteering as well. So yeah, there will be some of that communication coming out too.
Yep, great. Anything else? Okay. If there's anything that comes to your mind later, you can snag one of us afterwards, or you can request to grab time to talk about any of this stuff later. Open door policy that way. If you want more detailed financial reports, if you want to hear more about anything, just feel free to follow up with the appropriate people. Really appreciate all of you being here tonight, your interest and your investment in this community. I absolutely love it. We absolutely love it. And it's a really special thing to be involved with a community that cares so deeply about what's going on here. So thanks for being a part of stuff tonight. I've asked Lanil to close us in prayer. And so that microphone, Tim, or whoever's got it, needs to come back to Lanil. And then, yeah, then you are free to go.
I'm always struck family meetings. I appreciate everyone being here too, and for everyone who shared and asked a question about circling around the practicalities of our life together. Because as the slides were going by, I was like, this is very pragmatic, the things we're talking about, but how it really does represent our life together. And there's so many stories, people's stories behind everything that was talked about tonight. So thanks for being a part of that. I wanted to share a prayer with you, a blessing of sorts. I like it because it kind of returns us to our dependency on God's presence, even among the practicalities of being a church together. So would you pray with me? May we know the Father's heart and see the Son's compassionate bond with us revealed by the Spirit's power in our hearts. May the Spirit enliven us to seek first the kingdom of God with a growing confidence that the Father will always provide everything we need as we love and serve those near us. May the beautiful presence of Emmanuel shine light into our hearts so that we are free to love as Jesus loves us. May Christ help us love each person in our path and in our day and in our week and in our life. May our lives flourish for Jesus' sake and for his glory. Amen. Okay, next family meeting in
June.
June?
April, May, June, July. Yeah, quarterly.
right.
So 3 months out. We'll see you in July.
Thanks, guys.